Typically, any house built before 1980 is probably going to have what we call clay tile pipe, which is what this is. Looks like clay. There's a couple of variations of clay. There's a couple other kinds of pipe that don't work too well. But anything after 1980 would probably have rubber gasketed SDR35, which is what this is. This is the standard in the industry. Rubber gaskets, you don't have issues with this if it's installed properly. Now, with the clay tile pipe, it wicks water to the outside by nature. And so when roots come in contact with it, they find the very first joint that they can get into and they tear on into it. The rubber gaskets back then weren't made near as well as they are now. They use different lubricants, so they would deteriorate. Okay, so you have some options when this happens. At the very least, as Osmond was talking about, you really want to be able to at least access that sewer line from outside. And what we would typically do is, or somebody would go in, install what's called a clean out up by the house. That's a pipe, there's a Y in the line, and a pipe that comes all the way to the top of the ground. You pull the cap off, you run your rooter in there and open it up. That way they don't have to bring the equipment inside your house. And we don't do any rooter cleaning, but the rooter guy will bring his equipment into the yard only, and he can do a full 4-inch clean on your line. It'll last longer and it'll pay for itself. That's the very least. You've got a couple options of replacement. You could open cut it, but if you've got a house that's 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, you know, the soil's already been settled about as much as it's going to settle. So to dig it back up and have it settle all over, you run into a whole bunch of issues all over again. You've got settlement issues, you've got, you know, extra amount of money, you've got the amount of time it takes to dig. It takes several days. The cost is very, very high. So you've got, one of your other options would be to do trenchless sewer line replacement. And what that consists of is there's two different kinds of trenchless. One of them is you dig a hole on both ends and you pull a piece of pipe all the way through. Is called pipe bursting. Now, pipe bursting is an excellent product. The problem with it is that it'll last the entire lifetime, but it's the cost is not all that far off from what it costs to dig, because they still have to dig in the street, and that's where all your money comes in, is digging in the street. And the amount of time that it takes a little bit longer. It is a lifetime product. You won't get a lifetime warranty on it, but I guarantee if you've got a sewer line that's 200 foot long, that pipe is pretty inexpensive by the foot. I would recommend that you go with bursting. We don't see that very often. The third option is what we do, is cured in place pipe. It's what all the municipalities and districts everywhere, I mean across the country, use. Everyone on the Front Range, we do this for all the municipalities and districts on their smaller pipe. It's been around since 1979 or so. Loveland got the first one, and the stuff I looked at in 2000 looked like the day it was made. I used to work for the city of Longmont. I was there 14 years. I televised the whole city, 1.5 million feet of pipe, and the stuff that we had installed 20 years later looked fabulous. My house was the first one I did with this product 9 years ago, 900 liners ago, and it still is perfect. I still own the house, and you know, then was my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my father-in-law, pretty much got the whole family taken care of. So it is a lifetime product. It's 3 millimeters thick. It is seamless, it's jointless, it is harder than this, it is more heat resistant than this. You'll never have a root through it, you'll never have a shear, you'll never have a problem with this liner material. If there happens to be offsets, won't be a problem. I put a rock in here just to show how smooth it is. And this isn't, it never had sewage through it. I mean, I can pass it around if you guys want to take a look at it and see how hard it is. But the stuff is just bulletproof. As a matter of fact, Oscar Blues Brewery, we just did their sewer line in Longmont on their new brewery, and they put a couple 100 gallons of water, 180 degree water, through their brand new sewer pipe, and it melted it. And so they called me. I'd already done sewer line for them 9 years ago on Main Street. Wanted to know if my product would hold up to their hot water. Well, as it would happen, we use 180 degree water just to cure our liner material. You just can't hurt it. You know, it would take about 400 degrees just to do any kind of damage to the coating. And you're not going to get water to 400 degrees, so it's pretty safe.
So it's soft like that, in fact.
Yeah, it is soft. It's much like a fire hose. We put in resin, a two-part epoxy resin into this tube. and I didn't grab a piece of it, but it kind of looks like, it's lay flat, looks like a fire hose. We put it on in there and we wet it out. We do all of our work from one hole. We can dig anywhere in the yard. We do have to open up the pipe. We can dig anywhere in the yard, and we can go both ways or one way. We prefer to just go one way. It's cheaper for you and easier for us. So we dig a 2-foot by 5-foot hole right over the sewer, and we do all the installation. It stops right at the city main. If it happens to fall short, we'll come back and put an extension on at no extra charge. If it happens to be long, we got a piece of equipment that we run up in there and cut the end off so that we're not in the municipality or district's main line.
So you said offsets were okay, would that be
Yes.
true too if there's a belly in the line also?
Absolutely. The thing about the real common misconception about bellies in the pipe, and the biggest belly you're going to have in your sewer pipe is your toilet. It holds all that water and next down, and when you flush, that tank pushes that water down. That's what happens in a belly in your sewer line. Where you run into issues with a belly in your line is if the water leaches out or if the roots hold up the solids. Because water's your vehicle.
Yeah.
So if you've got a crack in the bottom and the water leaches out, then you no longer have your vehicle and you start to back up solids. And as far as low flow toilets, why the government got into our bathrooms is beyond me, because some people have 100 or 200 foot, like the guy that I'm working on in Longmont, 140 feet of clay tile pipe. Every single joint leaks a little bit of water. So you're trying to push piece of solids 140 feet with a gallon of water. You know, I mean, it's got to be like pushing something down with a straw or something, you know, I mean, blowing an egg down the driveway. I don't know what else to compare it to, but, you know, you're losing a little bit of water. So people that have those kind of issues, if they just don't want to do their whole pipe, then we contact them and say, look, you know, just get a high flow toilet, flush twice, something to that effect. Get enough water down your line to move your solids.
We're kind of naturally in the Q&A, so I'm assuming
Yeah.
that you were kind of wrapped up. Could you do, how about cost comparisons? I know that was a key factor.
Oh, that is huge. I mean, you're going to save landscape and money and time and money and concrete and driveway and money, and it is a huge savings. Over digging, we can be roughly 50% of the cost over open cut excavating. Over pipe bursting, if it's a typical line, which is, you know, about 65 feet, they run, you know, we probably save 25 to 40% on those, depending on who's doing the bid. If I look at a pipe and say, you know, you really need to do this or do that, you need to burst it, then I would refer you out to someone that does it. We don't talk anyone in or out of what we do. Our typical sewer lines, we can, if a cleanout's already there, we can put in what's called a pipe patch, which is a 30-inch section of this material remotely through a cleanout. That's new technology that we just finished developing. And those run roughly $1,200. If you've got one hole in the pipe or one crack or one root, or, you know, you're gonna sell the house, you don't wanna spend, you know, $5,000 or $6,000 on a line, we can always go in. We just did 2 of them for a realtor on, it must have been Friday. So it's not uncommon. And as each one that you add, if you do 2 of them, the second one is cheaper. A typical liner, sewer liner runs approximately $5,000. Your average dig runs about $10,000. Just a pothole in the street in Boulder, you're probably going to spend $5,500, and that's if it's not a new street. You'll probably spend another $500 to $800 if it's a new street, because it requires what's called an infrared patch, where they bring in a great big heater and heat all the asphalt and melt it back together. So
What's this product called?
it's a cured in place pipe, and we are Aqualine Services. This liner material and this resin is what I've had developed for myself. So it has a lot of the same qualities as what's out there. What's unique about ours is that I can cure this out in a couple hours without it fracturing or crystallizing. Any of the other resins that are out there don't give you that luxury. So we can be in and out. It used to be, when I first started 9 years ago, that it would take anywhere from 6 to 14 hours to cure, depending on the temperature outside. And now we can cure it out in a couple hours. I usually leave it for 3 hours.
And then start running water again.
Yeah, well, after 3 hours, what we'll do is we'll take the liner, we put a balloon inside of it, so it'll hold the water. it also holds that line open. And typically we'll use hot water, sometimes just hot air to cure it. Then we pull that balloon out and then tie the line back in and you're ready to use it. So, then what we do is put in our clean out, put the soil back in. Typically we use water to puddle it back in. And, we don't do any landscaping now. If you want landscaping, I mean, we can do it, but we really expensive, we suck at it. So, high-end, sucky job, we'll do it, But you still got to beg, there's a lot of catches for us to do landscape.
You said it costs a little more if you have to dig somewhere other than at the end?
I'm sorry?
You said it cost a little more if you ended up needing to dig in the middle and having to go both directions?
Yeah, roughly $300.
Okay.
Because we'll line one way, then we have to tear all the equipment back down.
It still might be cheaper than the extra landscaping, so yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, still. I mean, there's people that have had monstrous trees and we can't get next to the house. So we'll dig out by the street, backside of the curb, and we'll go both ways. And that works very well.
Anybody that knows me knows I do my research very thoroughly before we make decisions like major improvements or even business partners, and did a ton of research on Jeff's company, and there were no complaints in the neighborhood about the service, and a lot of people had opted for it because it was significantly less expensive than the full sewer line replacement. They weren't digging up in the street, they didn't need the permits, and there was one option that was actually less expensive than Jeff's, but it was an option from one guy that he wouldn't go underneath the street, he would do replacement right up to the sidewalk. And the concern from other contractors when I said, well, what about this other guy? I said, well, you could have roots under the sidewalk. You really want to make sure that you replace the whole line. And sure enough, there were an enormous amount of roots under the sidewalk that I just never would have expected to be there. But they were right. So I was really glad that we chose Jeff rather than the cheapest guy on the block. And Jeff was still a great deal.
We go back and redo those lines frequently where they stop at the back of the walk, because once they've taken out the nutrients, the access for the nutrients for the tree, for the roots, along that section, they get more aggressive under the road. And if somebody tells you, because I've heard this from plumbers before, well, you can't get roots under the road. Well, I can tell you after 1.5 million feet of pipe, there's roots under the road. I mean, lots of roots. So they're very, and as tall as a tree is, typically that's how far out those roots can go. So your neighbor's tree across the street could easily be into your pipe. So the bottom line is, as long as you've got access and you can keep it clean, that's the bare minimum you should have.
Do you typically send a camera down before you do your job, or?
Yes.
You do? Okay, so you know kind of the trouble spots and what you're getting into.
And sometimes we have to change directions where maybe there's a real bad broken spot, and it would make more sense just to dig right there and then run both ways because it's already broken.
Right.
So, occasionally I'll look at one and go, you know what, like this 140 footer, we have to dig, I'm sorry, we have to dig.
Because if you have a little bit of broken, and you can still run that balloon down and still
Yes.
epoxy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there doesn't even have to be pipe there. This is its own pipe when it's done. It's its own pipe. It'll be stronger than this, and we can go through a couple of feet of missing pipe and just shoot from one end to the other. Very attractive on busy streets especially.
So, any last questions for Jeff? We're kind of pushing up against time.
Yes, please. Is that the green pipe part of the PVC family?
Yes, it is PVC, polyvinyl chloride. Now, if you are running, the black pipe is typically ABS. White pipe's also going to be PVC, but it'll be Schedule 40 if it's outside. It is a thicker pipe, but it's glued fittings. And glued fittings will also get roots in there. We're working on one right now that has roots. Boulder's one of the few cities that allows it, but I've replaced numerous glued fitting joints. And then the pull-in-place stuff that's pipe burst, that is HDPE, high-density polyethylene. Fabulous product. Fabulous product.
My question is, and I
Sure.
understand PVC is carcinogen, no?
What this?
Polyvinyl chloride?
Well, it's going to be fully cured.
I think it's when it burns, when it's the carcinogen.
And you don't want to catch it on fire.
Like house
Okay.
fire.
I guess my question is then, is that how toxic is the stuff that you?
I don't know that you could eat it, but it is a no-BOC product, no VOC.
It's made of what?
I said, I don't know that you
The
could eat
outside
it.
ceramic?
Well, the outside, the liner material itself is 2 layers of felt, a layer of PVC coating here, or vinyl, one or the other, depending on which type we use, and a layer of fiberglass.
So no VOC mean no volatile organic chemicals or
That is correct.
no off-gassing?
That is correct. And there are some processes with city mains that do still use that. We don't, styrene is usually the other resin that's being used, but more and more people have gotten away with it. But I wouldn't use anything that, you know, that would cause a problem or even get into my skin. I mean, I'm also a firefighter, and as a firefighter, we train all sorts, about all sorts of different hazardous material and hazmat, and I mean, the kind of stuff that can just absorb through your skin is just amazing. I mean, you wouldn't even have to breathe it, just touch it, and it can really make you very sick. We don't have anything like that. It's not even classified under the DOT regulations for hauling it. You can haul as much as you want without having to placard it.